No, I just,
It's on.
it could be.
It's recorded. Make it one.
Claims are
MIA.
the deck and
Really?
the dock, the railing, the gangway, the guy from Atlanta. He was
that
up here for 10
looking
days. So we went down looking at a project down in Bridgeport,
Is
Connecticut.
a part of the boys.
We're going to call to order the CPA committee meeting for February 19th. For those that don't come to these meetings, it is audio and video recorded, just so that you have that. Just a couple, we'll go through a couple of administrative items. Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes as provided by Jamie? And was there any questions or amendments or things you want to change before I entertain a motion to approve them? Hearing none, will someone make a motion?
I move to approve.
I second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Account balances, open process, projects, reports of city officials. Jamie, anything?
Yeah. So the city council approved the rail trail appropriation on, I think it was February 5th.
Mhm.
So that makes the current account balances just over $1 million in total, 640,000 in the undesignated account, 280,000 in the reserve fund, and 101,000 in affordable housing. There's nothing left in the open space, and there's $27 left in the historic preservation account. The other updates, you may have noticed that the Arch Street was taken off the agenda. They requested to withdraw their application from the CPA. So they're off for now. And if at a later point we want to go into potential upcoming projects, we can
Okay.
go through that later.
Varying a little from the agenda, Ed wants to, he saw something in the paper, he just wants to public speak to announce it. And again, I'm not trying to put the athletic director on the spot, but maybe you can help him a little with what, he's kind of, go ahead, Ed.
Trying to figure out what's going on with the schools that they want to condense and get rid of them.
In other words, I think he's looking in terms of, we just approved the football field, and now there's an article of possibly building or going forward with a K through 8, and if he gets questioned, do we know exactly where, maybe you don't have that information. In other words, where they might want to cite it.
Yeah, I think
in other words,
you-
we didn't want to spend the money on the football.
I think you want to talk to somebody
Super,
on the
okay.
school committee about that. I'm not
So you don't,
privy to
I didn't
all
know if
their.
they, that was kind of our question, if you had any idea where they plan on citing it, if they, in other words, you're talking 2 years, 3 years before
Yeah.
it would be approved anyway.
10
So-
years,
10 years,
15.
if you will, yeah.
I mean, I hesitate to say anything because I think all I've heard is speculation.
That there might be.
So,
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
I
no,
just
that's
knew-
okay. I mean, the bottom line is with the football field, I mean, that's gonna stay where it is.
Yes.
So it's not like they're gonna build the football field and then say, hey,
Fair.
there's a nice place to put a school and put the school on top of the football field. At
I
least,
think that was.
I mean, I would think that's not a good idea.
We would agree with that. I think we would agree with that.
Patty Dawkins, your
And then the athletic director.
Well, there is another on the other side of the tree house or something. Anyway, moving on to the continuing business. First up is the East Hampton Parks and Rec, the new soccer field. And I see Mr. Mason's here tonight, and the athletic director's here tonight, and the fire chief and representative is here tonight.
And some soccer board
And some
members.
soccer
Soccer board
are
members
here
are here as well.
And I know John provided Jamie with some figures on the usage, which we had asked for last, and if I have them right, it's approximately 80 high school students and 518 rec and travel soccer players, 48 pre-K program, 52 summer clinics and goalie. Those, John, when you say 52 summer, those aren't 52 participants, right? So that's like, those are different clinics, or that's what participation?
Participation,
So that's
due to
what's coming.
participation numbers, yeah.
Is there any adult use, or is it?
There is adult use. It's informal use at this time. Yeah, there's still,
You don't restrict it.
no, there is adult use, but not, these are just registered through.
Official
Yeah.
users of the field. And, if you could just kind of go over a little, or Chief Bonner, I know what we were talking about, putting in one new field, and then watering, if I remember it from last meeting, there'll be water installed to water one automatically, and the lines will be put into the others, is that correct?
It'll be water for two of the fields, the new one and then the varsity field, and then putting the extensions out to the other fields so we can tap into it at a later date,
Okay.
but get the main lines in. We can in-house have the ability to tie in irrigation at a smaller level, but not at a project this size. So getting the main lines in there run and then be able to come off of them, we feel we could do in-house if needed as a piecemeal as we move forward years to come.
And I only really have one more question. This goes back to the baseball, which I think, I know a couple of the projects we've since, not necessarily just CPA, but the city as finance have come in sort of over budget after we've appropriated money. Are we pretty confident? I know you never can tell 100% because we do put contingency. Did the baseball come in about what we,
Baseball came in on the number,
on the number?
exact on the number,
So you
and I'm confident that the soccer would come in at the same as well. Done some preliminary work on the numbers, and yeah, we're confident that we can get it done for that number.
Any other questions from the committee members, or?
Can you speak to the lifespan of an irrigation system? What are we thinking? How many years are we able to?
The ones in the park, I mean, the heads go, that's where you're, they need to be replaced. Some get hit by a mower, things like that, they pop out, frost, things. We probably replace about 5 heads a year. The lines themselves, we've sprung leaks, but it's not the whole line. You section off a piece and whether it's 4 feet or whatever, cut the water off it. They tie it in and they fix it. We've always done that in-house. It's something we were able to do.
And you can just tell where the leak is based on.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it doesn't take long to find them.
Okay. So you're talking more than 10 years, more than.
Oh, yeah,
more than 20 years. We're talking
20
about-
years on
Yeah,
Gagner.
Gagner Field, which is the old Lassie League field, that sprinkler system's got to be at least 20 years old. The main controllers and, like John said, other than heads, I don't think we've ever done, other than 1 year when the inside, the concession stand wasn't winterized, we had some pipes break. But the system itself is well over 20 years old and never had any major repairs or renovations done.
And the benefit of the irrigation system, speak to the benefit of the irrigation system versus not, because, you have an open space, right, with a field, and currently we don't have irrigation for, those fields, or a number of them at least, so.
Yeah.
What are we expecting?
Maintenance-wise, being able to reseed, they take on a lot of wear and tear. We don't apply any chemicals to the field, so we don't have a wash-away concern with when we deal with that. Just those hot days when everything's burning up, and you can get just an hour in the morning to cool them down, get some growth. It'll the amount of damage that can be done in August just having 95, 100 bake the grounds, and then you'll see it in the fall when they start playing on it. It just chews them up that much quicker. So being able to have healthier quality fields with
Plus,
water helps.
with his limited staff, currently they use the water cannons, which requires somebody to set them up, somebody to go back up. What's the cannon?
Chasing them around, yeah, you
It's
got to
what,
move
2
them,
hours
2
for
hours, you
runtime?
got to reset it out, and then it takes 2 hours to wheel
Probably
back
not
in
the most
and do it
efficient distribution of water with those cannons. That's why you pay me.
Just one other thing, John. I noticed there was, usually, we realize when it's a total city project, you don't look for as much, like sharing, cost sharing. And I know like the big baseball, they did a lot of the work on it. There has been some, I was reading like 23,000 of the youth soccer have put into like lawn and stuff like that. Is that ongoing where they
Yeah.
contribute?
Yeah, they contribute on a yearly basis. One of the things that doesn't show up is vehicle income fees that go back to the city. They don't go back to our department, but the vehicle entrance fees from the weekend, use from soccer, that generates revenue that goes back into the city coffers as well. So that's not on here as a
Right,
direct, but it's an indirect benefit for the city.
Would either of you like to say anything? We love when people come down to the meetings. You know. I don't know if you just give your support. I assume you're going to support it.
Yes, we support it. Right now, we currently have 10 teams registered for spring soccer, and we always go up higher with numbers for fall soccer. So as John Mason said, when you have 12 to 15 teams on top of high school teams all practicing on the same grassed area, when they're not watered properly, we end up having complete dirt. We can't paint lines on to keep games at the standard that they should be played. So having the irrigation system will plush our fields so that we don't ruin them as quickly. And it'll help with the expense of reseeding. It won't be just throwing our seeds down and then watching them, shrivel up.
Thank you. Could you just give your name to Jamie for the minutes?
Sure. My name is Autumn Roy.
You're on the,
Yeah, I'm the PVJSL coordinator for the East Hampton Soccer League.
Your comment makes me, sort of reminds me, this is sort of a capacity issue too. I mean, we have the irrigation system, but we're also adding a field. And when I was looking over the numbers of participants for soccer, it occurs to me that the benefit of this additional soccer field is really sort of at the margins, right? It's not when you have
huge.
1 or 2 games going on, it's when you have a lot of games happening simultaneously, right?
Right.
So I'm wondering if you can speak to when we're at sort of peak capacity now and what the additional capacity can bring, if anything, to the city. And I'm thinking also potentially, are we able to attract tournaments, or is there something more that we can do in Nantucket than we can currently do with the additional capacity? I don't know if anybody can speak to that.
I mean, one thing we've already done, the Soccer Association has already done, they run a 3v3 tournament every year that has attracted players from all over Western Mass as well as Connecticut. And I think one thing that people say is what a great complex it is. The other thing is that right now we're kind of over capacity for what the fields can handle. Over the past few years, we've added more and more competitive teams to our association. So our travel teams that go out. When 10 years ago, we probably had 1 or 2 of those teams, and now, as Autumn said, we have 10 teams this spring, and we play against teams from other towns. So there's certainly people coming in from other communities, and as John mentioned, they're also, adding to. They have to pay for parking when they come in the park. So adding that additional field will give us an opportunity to not only have extra field space, but to rest part of the fields as well. Right now, we don't have an opportunity to rest a field, so our junior varsity field is also our Pioneer Valley field, and it is played on competitively in the spring and the fall. And the plan would be, with developing the new field, to be able to rest parts of so we can bring the grass back and not have dirt fields.
We beat this one to death already.
Okay, entertain a motion that we approve. Anyone want to make that?
Where are we gonna take it from is a question. We have to take it on the
I think we
spot.
have to take it from open space
No, it's
recreation.
nothing
No,
in
I mean
open space.
undesignated, because we have nothing. What was that, 27 dollars? That was a discard?
that was history.
Oh, okay, we can't use
Yeah, it has to
27.
come out
Not on
of
this one.
undesignated. I move that we recommend $230,120 for the reconstruction of the Nonotuck Park soccer field.
Second.
and that such funds come from the undesignated fund.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to fund a project of a new soccer field, the amount of $230,120 from the undesignated funds. Is there any further discussion? I'll just make one comment that the two projects came forward about 2.5, now 3 years ago, and I know we divided them and, because we didn't want to spend the whole thing in one. And I'm just glad to see that this is kind of the culmination, I think. And again, I know the thing is closed for the comments, but I mean, I think this will pretty much fill Nonotuck Park. I mean, it's the soccer's full, the baseball's full, and so I think, I know these have been over the last few years. I'll just make the comment, I know we spent quite a bit of money to get all this stuff up, but I think it's really of value to the, not only the youth, but the whole citizen. I mean, people that come into East Hampton are always marvel at, because the park is sort of set off. So if people actually go there, I think a lot of them don't even realize what a gem this city has in that park. So that's my only comment. If there's no other comments, I'll take a vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to Pasquamic Trust, Mudfield and Brickyard Brook Accessible Trail. Mr. Baker's here again. Don't mind, right?
$27.
I know we talked extensively on your project also over the last couple of meetings, and you had come back originally, just to refresh the committee, I believe it was, the initial was for $260,000, and then when you realized that prevailing wage didn't have to be utilized, the request has been brought down to $185,000.
They took the expensive trees out.
Right, some of, at least the labor on the trees. I guess I'll open it up first to either the Pasquamic, if you have anything else to add, or the committee members, that if you have questions, by all means, to them.
Can I make a minor correction in the pronunciation of our name?
Pasquamic.
It's Pascomic,
Pascomic.
which supposedly was a Native American word that meant where the rivers come together.
Okay.
Where the river bends.
Where the rivers...
Where the river bends.
Ah.
Which is it?
Here's an old Indian.
Old Indians.
I don't have any changes to report since the last report that I gave to you. So.
Yeah, I just want to add that we had our annual meeting this past Tuesday, and we had a presentation on Mutterfield and all this stuff, and there's a lot of enthusiasm about it. And,
We had a presentation from a biologist from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who was one of the two people who was responsible for putting in the trail at where they have at Brymar Stables there in Hadley's. They have like an over a mile long accessible trail there, and we're kind of copying their design because they have an above ground trail like we're going to have. And so he gave a great presentation, and we're inspired.
Committee members, any additional questions for
When the price comes down this much, I got no questions.
A man who loves a sail.
I think it'll be a great project. I'm, excited that you brought it forward, and looking forward to its hopeful use by all sorts of different ages and members of the community. So, thank you.
I'll just make one comment. I wholeheartedly support the concept, and will certainly vote for it tonight as a member of the CPA. I would, and I know Mr. Cannon wasn't able to come to the last, I don't think he was in town. I don't know, I shouldn't say, I don't know what Mr. Cannon said. But when it does get to finance, just something for the thing, I would hope that he would be able to, I know it's not really something for you, to kind of break down for finance this, I'm kind of giving this a little breakdown for finance, what the prevailing wage, I know the difference in the line, but how that actually is computed, anything like that, if
So you'd like a...
this is assuming the committee passes this.
Right, so they would want a breakdown of the original submission
original-
versus the
yes,
second
just the-
one, and what
right.
accounts for the
Right.
difference?
Yes, kind of like what the wage, in other words, I guess, what is the prevailing wage versus, and maybe there's different
I think there were other
different vendors
factors.
might have different wages. I mean, that's the kind of just a little more detailed breakdown. I think we'd probably be looking for before we finally approved it and sent it to the full council.
I think there were other factors involved as well.
Right, and I know he kind of would be the one really to.
Yeah, okay,
I just wanted to bring that up before we go there.
sure.
Mr. Sparkle, would you
Yeah,
like?
yeah,
No, you're not doing this one?
oh, you wanna make a motion?
If you're ready.
I don't have any questions.
No, I was gonna have you make a motion if nobody had any.
I move that we recommend $185,000 for the construction of the handicapped accessible trail for the Pasconic Trust, and that the monies come from the undesignated fund.
I'm looking at 186,415, or are we rounding that?
Our thing was 185 that I had.
The one that I have in front of me says 185.
Is that right? Okay.
185.
That's what I had.
Is that?
Yeah,
No, it's just the total project cost of,
the cover sheet that was submitted with the revised cover sheet.
Is this one?
am I looking at
So
stale?
185, right.
Just wanted to make sure we have the right number.
Right.
If they're happy with 185, let's do 185.
We'll take more if you want.
Yeah, we don't get paid for anything.
See, I should have rounded
Did,
the other
did,
one.
I, do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second
Okay,
it.
we got a motion and a second to fund, and this would be coming out of Jamie, of undesignated
Undesignated.
also, right? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to fund this project at Mutterfield and Brickyard Accessible Trails to the tune of 185. Is there any further discussion? Having a motion and a second. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll,
I don't know, I'll get to, Alexis, as you can see, the chair, I'm vice chair, so Alexis isn't here, so between Jamie and Alexis, they'll get the funding into the mayor, and the mayor has to actually submit it to the council. I don't know, that sometimes can
Yeah, if you're,
be,
there'll be an appropriation request from the city, from the CPA to the mayor, and the mayor will forward it to the city council. And it's probably about 2 weeks before the city council will take it up.
right, then it goes to the full council, and then it gets sent to subcommittee, so, you know, we'll make sure you're well informed when it's gonna be heard at the subcommittee.
And if you don't hear anything, feel free to check in with the planning department or the city clerk, because she'll know where the city, where that appropriation is in the city council's meeting schedule.
a couple of questions, Shane. How often has it happened where something's been approved here and then not been approved by the finance committee, for example?
In the 3 years that I've been on working with the committee, it's never happened.
Never happened.
I don't believe that it ever happened in the history of the CPA.
I can't remember ever
Well, I'm just wondering if we would be foolish to start preparing a request for bids just to get the ball rolling here, if we can be confident that this is actually going to happen.
I would prepare the request for bids, I just wouldn't sign a contract.
Yeah,
At least-
yeah.
At least it's through his committee.
Right.
And, you know, the only thing, we do have to vet it, like the finance would, you know, I said on finance, we do vet them, and, you know, sometimes we'll look at cost, and, you know, we also have the authority to say, well, geez, you know, we don't think it should be the 185, we should think it would be 180, but I mean, I think, again, in the time I've been on finance, which has been the past 6 years, we have always supported CPA requests.
Okay.
But we do feel we have to vet them and vet the finances, and that's us, the finance subcommittee, so that's our job, to vet the finances. So it would be more a thing of making sure everything, all your numbers are squared away and stuff like that.
Do you think we'll get a final answer within a couple of months, would you say?
I would think that's very possible.
Usually the whole process, this time of year, because everyone's meeting, the city council meets twice a month, it would take about 6 weeks at the fastest, I think, to go to through city council, plus a week or so, depending on when their agenda items hit and when they need to post, so.
Finance meets twice a month, so,
Yes.
you know, but it has to go to the full council first, then get sent to finance, and then after we usually will have 1 or 2 meetings on it, and then send it back to the full council. So, you know, I think Jamie's about right on
Okay.
About a 2 month.
a 2-month window at the most.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then obviously it can take longer if the finance subcommittee has a lot of questions or the city council wants to.
And this is a good time because in another couple of months, the
Budgets.
budgets will start, and then it gets a little jammed up in finance. So hopefully you're gonna get in just under the wire.
Good. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We'll sharpen up the golden shovels for you.
Moving on, budget request.
So, was there any question about the budget that I sent out? It was,
Yeah, it's the same as we
The
talked
same
about.
other
yeah, I
than,
mean, it's the same that I verbally presented to you last.
And we approved it last time, right?
Well, you guys said that you wanted it in writing, so
Yeah.
here's in writing, but I just want to make sure now that you have it in writing, you've had some time to look at it, whether or not there's any questions or clarifications about how anything was arrived at, or, you know, if you're fine with it and you just want to move along to a vote, that's fine too.
I mean, I know we discussed it, you know, I know there was the small increase for administrative, and then you said there was some, on the administrative expense.
It's salary.
Right, the 500 for the,
Did you get a raise or you gonna work more hours?
I'm not working more hours, but every year there's a cost of living.
Well, okay, that's,
So-
yeah, it's a,
I mean, it's not a raise, it's just it's
oh,
an
yeah.
adjustment with inflation
That's
that's,
still a raise.
Oh, this is
I'm
more-
still
this
making
is-
less money than.
This is good inflation
last
right
year.
here.
I don't think we're rolling that much, but I will say, and again, you know, I'll say this to all the committee members, because I don't know how much that you all rely on Jamie, but Jamie's, I think, is always there. If you send it in, especially by email, and give her time, you know, she will provide the information to you on a timely basis, and always is very thorough with whatever you ask.
Thank you.
But, so I have a question, is, all of this goes to you, is that right? The, sort of the salary piece, the 7,000 and the increase to 7,500, is that what you're saying?
Theoretically,
Cost of living.
I mean, the way this comes out to is that's about 6 hours a week. I generally work 5 hours a week for the CPA, and there's a little bit of a extra in there for if an unusual project comes up, or if the CPA wants me to do something outside of the normal administrative stuff, so there's some extra time there. So it doesn't necessarily,
Will you be the beneficiary of this increase?
I mean, it's, yes, I'm working for the
Good,
CPA.
okay, that's all I wanted to know.
But it's not necessarily that all of that is at the end of the year. There could be some that's returned back to the CPA.
I would like to be considered a raise. Because this is more than anybody gets per cost of living as far as percentage. I mean, I think it's a good, 7% increase or whatever.
Your employer's not going to give you that cost.
I don't get a 7% cost of living increase, I'll tell you what. And it's, and I think you do great work, so anyhow, I just wanted to make sure that you were the beneficiary of it.
But a little historical spin, and I think it was low for a long time. And,
Sure.
When JB came, I think we tried to put a little more reasonable and bring it up a little bit. Any other discussion before we, Mr. Sparkle, you want to make another motion? You're doing well tonight. I'm leaning on you here to the right.
I move that we approve the CPA budget request as submitted on the worksheet.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on submitting a budget as it appears on the worksheet. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
General ordinances, anyone have any more comments on the ordinances?
Yeah, just this one here, again, I'm gonna say, I don't agree with the 90-day thing about if somebody doesn't appoint.
I thought that over after you mentioned it last time, Ed, and I am in agreement with you. I don't think, to me, and I know it was really one committee that John's now sitting on, that I think has brought this to the forefront, where the Star Commission didn't provide anyone for a while, so I think that's sort of what was the thing. And I just feel that if committees don't want to send someone, I don't really think, the mayor, I think, the mayor appoints the historic.
Exactly.
So, we'd just be giving the mayor more authority of positions that are from other boards. So, I mean, again, I'm not, it's just Mr. Sparkle and I that are saying that at this point.
Is on it, when you look at the intent of the original ordinance and the way it was set up to make the appointments, it was deliberately done so that the city council had control over 3 of the appointments of the committee, and that the finance chair would always sit on the committee in order that it would expedite things through. That's why there's never been something that was approved by this committee that hasn't gotten through the finance committee because of the weight of the city council on this committee. And even if a city council appointee wasn't appointed or there wasn't anybody available for it, the mayor doesn't have a right to appoint that person. The mayor doesn't have the right to appoint for the historical commission. He can appoint to the historical commission and it's their responsibility. So historically, that should not be in here.
So it seems like there's consensus among,
No, I don't think there's consensus. You've heard from two of the CPA committee members. I'm not, that doesn't qualify as consensus.
That's only 2 out of 6, so we're
Yeah,
not gonna
exactly. And there are other people who are not here.
the
so.
silent majority.
You know, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what need is really addressed with this, with the proposal. I mean, you know, I hear what you're saying, Ed, as far as, you know, weight of it. Presumably, there's a hazard here that led for this to be even a question that the committee is talking about, and the hazard, I guess, is that potentially you have a committee that's not full. And I don't, right now with one vacancy, I'm not sure that the hazard sort of warrants a change, but the question is raised because potentially you could have, you know, several vacancies end up, you know, over long term, kind of diluting the vitality of a committee. So I just want to throw that out there because I don't think it's a wasted question to raise when we have a long-term vacancy on this committee, what that means for the vitality of the committee at large, and if there is any action that, you know, we should look into doing. So, and I'm not saying I'm in favor of it. I just want to throw it out there. I'm not as fully opposed to it maybe as other people have spoken already. So, any further discussion I invite. I mean, I honestly I could go for something that was a long 90 days for me seems like a pretty short turnaround time. And you know, if you have a long-term vacancy and we're talking, you know, a year or 2 years, where we're having just you know, nobody filling the seat, what happens? You know, and I'm relatively new. I'm a novice here when it comes to the committee. But talk to me about what you would propose.
A couple of things.
Yeah.
Okay, is first the total number on the committee is what's important in that you would have a majority. Okay, and most of the I don't know how long has this committee been existing now? 20 years. Close to it.
2001.
Yeah,
2002 was when that CPA
14,
was in.
15 years, okay? In 15 years, there's been one problem, or two problems. There's one city council president appointee was vacant for about 4 or 5 months, your seat. Okay, that's because somebody get here and they quit, they get here and they quit. The Historic Commission, I think the problem with that is there aren't any people on the committee. Okay, and those who are on the committee are unwilling to serve. Okay, now, where my contention is it's up to the committee to make the appointment. All right, if they don't have somebody on that committee to serve, it's their responsibility to go out and find that person, or whoever appoints to that committee, whether it's a Park and Rec, or Historic, or whoever it might be. That's where the responsibility is. As long as there's enough people on this committee to make the decisions, it may be that the Historical Commission isn't represented because they didn't want to send anybody. And nobody in town is interested in being on a committee, so that's why there's not someone there. Where I have a problem with it is it takes the appointment out of the hands of the committee that was originally responsible to do it and gives it to the mayor on each of these. And I don't think it's the mayor's authority. He shouldn't have that authority. She shouldn't have that authority.
Well, it does raise an issue as far as, you know, if, for instance, the mayor did appoint somebody for what would ordinarily be a committee appointment, what then happens when their term, the mayor appointee term expires? I mean, does it go back to the committee or not? Well, you sort of brought this forward, so what was your...
We can, I mean, I was sort of suggesting, because I was attempting to deal with the long-term vacancy.
Sure.
My thought was, because the mayor ultimately makes the appointments for indirectly, she makes the original appointments for the committees that serve, and the city council approves all of those recommendations that I didn't see it as being something that would be, I don't know, raise everyone's
Divisive.
yeah. But, it was just an option. I mean, it was just like sort of an idea to try to get the conversation going. So I do think if the problem is 90 days, we can change that. If it's the appointment authority, that it's the mayor, maybe that authority should go to the city council. Maybe it's a temporary appointment for 6 months or a year, so that way it doesn't have a long-term impact on it. But there might be ways to go about getting a vacancy filled without taking away power from the city council or the committee that position's being filled by.
Also, maybe it's not a problem, and maybe we don't need to change anything. There's been one problem in 15 years of a delayed seat.
I hear that, and I also hear that there's a different perception on it actually being a problem, so, I mean, I didn't think it was a problem either, but,
Well,
you know.
just for the ordinance goes on to explain about quorum and voting. So the CPA is unique in that the votes are, you need a majority of the 9-member board, regardless of how many seats are filled or how many people show up at a quorum. So most committee meetings, if you have a board of 9 people, quorum is at 5, and if you had 5 people present, you would only need 3 members of that quorum to vote in order to move something forward. The CPA requires 5 members to move anything forward.
So you have to have a consensus of your 5-person quorum in order to approve something.
If there were only 5 members of the board. So it could, if 2 or 3 boards started to not have appointments, it could affect the ability for the CPA to get business, to move these appropriations along. Whether or not that's something that the CPA thinks is a good thing or a bad thing,
Or it empowers the dissenters on the board or whatever,
Right.
it gives them more voice. Okay,
I mean,
I'm just unsatisfied, but, go ahead.
No, I just want to say a couple of quick comments of like, tonight is a good example of, we're 3 members short, but we still got the business done. Now, I would say that if we just started debating a project, I wouldn't feel comfortable approving it with 6 members, you would want a couple of the others to weigh in. But I mean, business does go on, and 1 or 2 members doesn't make a difference. And I agree with what Ed says, and there's nothing saying to me and I hate to keep picking on historic because, historic commission, because only they were the ones that, but again, ultimately, it is really the mayor's responsibility. While I wouldn't want to give that mayor, whichever mayor it is, not this mayor, any mayor, the authority to make an appointment outside of the board, I think certainly the board could craft, if we have a vacancy, maybe we should be a little more assertive in the future, going to the mayor and saying, listen, you got to appoint some more board members to your historic, because if she appoints, I'll say she, because she's currently our mayor, and I'm not picking on this current mayor, but, we don't have enough on historic, you got to go out and appoint a historic, fill your historic committee, or if it's the city council, you got to go we're short a person, go to the president of the city council, say we're 1 member short on CPA from the city council, go find a member that, put the heat on them. We have a right to, we can't control the mayor, you can't control the city council, but you certainly can send them a letter saying, putting the onus on them. If business doesn't get done in the CPA, and it's the mayor's fault or the city council's fault, put take the onus off us as a committee and say, listen, this is your responsibility to appoint members to the board. So, and I guess that's my feeling. I'd like to leave it the way it is, but again, on this one vote, and certainly, and it certainly we ought to decide tonight. I'd like Alexis to be here and the chair at least before we make a final vote. I know we're getting down to that.
well, if we can maybe come to a consensus tonight on how to move forward on this one issue, I can redraft it for the next meeting.
Well, I guess I'd like to say, I think it's a valid issue, valid question, and I think there probably is a time, hypothetically or out there, at which point you'd want to visit or revisit this question. I just don't think we're at the crossroads right now where it's enough of an issue where I would feel like we need to, sort of give the mayor the appointment authority at this point, because I just don't feel like the need that would be addressed is pressing enough to warrant that.
If I could comment, and again, with acknowledgement that I'm new, so my apologies.
No,
I was not aware.
You're not that new, you've been there a few meetings.
My take is that, well, first of all, that it's probably a pretty simple thing to solve. Mostly has to do with the wording. If a continuing problem exists, then another way to look at this, to flip it, is that the committee needs the assistance, potentially, of the mayor. So instead of it being a fait accompli, that like, okay, this line has been crossed, now this kicks into gear, the option could exist that the committee says, we're having trouble, we need help. So also that would answer the question of automatically, once this situation passes, yes, it all goes back to the authority of the committee. It doesn't stay with the mayor.
Exactly.
And that seems to me to make sense too, because the problem as I see it, this is the third committee I sit on, and so my take of the problem that the Historic Commission had was not so much a lack of members, but a lack of members that were available to take on the additional committee. So you could have a full committee and it still might not solve the problem. So I agree that something needs to happen, because I would say it's not just a matter of the numbers on this committee, but also the diversity of it. My impression is that the intention in part was to have representation from all these other committees. So my suggestion would be that it's a request that comes up from the committee itself, and that it would be short-term, maybe 6 months, something like that, and then it automatically defers back to the committee that originally had that power. And that change in phrasing would seem like that would...
Give me like a proposed thing of what that might be.
Why do we change it? I don't understand why we're changing it. That's the whole thing, is what you just said, is if the committee has problem getting someone, okay, and the committee is appointed by the mayor, the chairman of that committee can go to the mayor and ask for help. Okay, the mayor can then say, well, I got this guy that'll do it, and the committee can appoint that. And then you have absolutely no change in the law. The law says that, because when you say the mayor's gonna appoint, it doesn't go with the rest of what the law says, Jamie. It says one member of the Conservation Commission, okay, is designated by the commission for a term of 3 years. That means that if there isn't a member on that commission, okay, that's going to come and take the job, what's the mayor gonna do? Go and say, well, you're gonna be the one on the committee to do it? And make the appointment from the committee when the committee can't itself make the appointment? Because he has to appoint somebody on the committee. That's what the law says.
Well,
The law says that somebody's from that committee's gonna sit on there. You can't take somebody that's not on the committee and assign them that job.
it also says that if any of those boards, councils, or committees who have appointment authority no longer are in existence, the appointment authority falls to the mayor.
Where does it say that?
If you take out the 10 words that I added, the rest of that is in the current legislation.
Okay.
So,
Defaults to the mayor if the committees don't exist for some reason.
But that's if there, I mean, that's
So if they don't
if there
exist-
was no historic commission,
So,
So
or there was no
so-
conservation commission.
so-
right, so I mean,
so just take it's just a 90-day thing that you're sticking in there, so why bother changing it?
I don't want to change it. I'm with you, man.
I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward. There was a.
Don't jump on her, she doesn't even sit on the committee, you know,
I mean,
so
I'm
she was just
I'll-
introducing the topic of
No, no.
conversation, Ed. I think we're ready to move on from this one, but.
Yeah, I see no, the only
I
thing
just-
we should be updating in this, that changes the law, is the things that are in here that bring it in compliance with the state law. That's the only thing that needs to be changed in here, is if the wording or the termination, the terms are not going with compliant with state law. Those are the ones that need to be changed. The rest of it does not need to be touched.
I'm with you, and I would say that actually, as it's written, it's still in compliance with the state law.
Yes.
It's just not aligned with the state law. So I think we ought to move to bring the wording in alignment with the recent state, verbiage. But I tend to agree with you, Ed, on that.
So if we were to make a suggestion, the suggestion would be to take everything out of here except the things that make this up to date with the current state law. Everything else, gone, would be my suggestion. There's no need to change the law, is what I'm saying.
I think most of what Jamie has in here is actually bringing it up.
To the state law?
Yeah.
I don't know, I might leave out the definitions, to be honest,
Yes.
from the local. I don't think we need all the definitions. People can go to the state, they can find it online if they need to, for definitions, but anyhow.
It's just the more you put into a law, an ordinance or a law, makes it more complicated. And this committee has worked well for 15 years under this ordinance. So I see no need whatsoever to change it, except if there are things that are not compliant or aligning with the state law, then those things should be changed.
And I would suggest then, if I may, propose taking what you've heard this evening and maybe bringing us one more copy that just looks at the changes that would bring us in alignment with state law, and then maybe we can vote on it in a future meeting, next meeting or something like that. Does that make sense?
Is there
Or
a
do we
consensus
want-
to remove the definitions and just refer?
I'd say so.
Personally would like the definitions removed, but I don't know how other people think, so.
I just, as someone that deals with the ordinances, sometimes the longer they are, the more complicated they are.
The definition's almost
People
doubles the
can go
size
get
of the, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it ends up just
I mean, those are the
diluting the value of the rest of it if we add a page or two of definitions at the end.
When we
so.
get a problem, we can go to the state definitions as, we don't have to have them in our ordinance.
My personal opinion, sure.
No, I agree with you. So can we do that, Jamie? Bring it
Yeah.
back
So I'll,
at the next meeting?
At the next meeting, I will submit another
Copy.
red line that has the definitions removed and the vacancy piece left out, unless someone wants to propose something that's
Everybody.
different.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you've done is actually a positive, it's really sort of both clarifying and aligning what we have with the state. And I think that's a good step. So I appreciate the work that you've done to kind of put this on our radar screen. Let's take a look at that.
So I think that's good, Jamie. We'll have that stuff stricken on the mayor's thing and the definitions out, and then bring it back a clean copy, and hopefully
So do you guys
with
want?
Alexis and the other members, we can maybe try to get a full vote at the next.
Were there any other comments about
Anything
it?
else, Ed, that you, I mean, the rest of it was pretty.
I hate to change something that's it's not broke, don't fix it.
There was one thing that I did look at, if you just could bear with me for a second. There was something here, Jimmy, maybe you can, about regional,
Yeah.
where's that located?
That should be in.
Oh,
On
on
the
the
first
section,
page.
number one, right, committee shall annual study.
Yep.
Is that something new, or is that?
Yeah, that was added by the 2012, that,
State law that you can do regional,
yeah, so, that the CPA plan that we do every year shouldn't just look at the city, but it should also look at the region, in the plan, and then also, I have to double check this, but I assume that means that, then if it's a regional project, CPA monies can be used and spent outside of the city. But it doesn't say that I have to go back and look and see how that.
My read of the language on that, actually, Dan, too, is just to essentially urge the.
To look at things on a regional scale as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not requiring, it's basically saying to study these, including the consideration of, I mean, you know, don't just limit yourself.
I just have heard that there's a possibility of something between East Hampton and Southampton that's in
Yes.
the works, and that's mostly in Southampton, and I don't want to necessarily commit us to that without, you know, if, I don't think this does that, this just makes us.
No, I
I'm
mean,
not saying it's, I don't know enough about what's being proposed, but I know there's something
I
out
mean, again,
there.
this is, that's the wording from the, it's from the state law.
Right, from the-
So it's,
right.
I mean, it's in the community preservation plan that the committee consider regional projects. And so it's not,
Doesn't mean you.
it doesn't mean that you
forced
have to do it, but it does, once you start to consider them, you know, it's
You
still
can-
a,
I know, if it's in the state, law, you know,
I
compliance.
mean,
I know.
that's a huge change for me to just propose.
Right.
The only other thing that I would like your clarification on, there's that, in section 2, number 2, it had in green, strike through, recommendations to the city council should include their anticipated costs. I moved that to the requirement for form and cost estimate. I just moved it down to be in a, where I thought it made more sense with the form and cost estimates.
Those fine.
I thought so too, but I just want to make sure because going forward, it's nice to like not split hairs over that as well.
It's placement, I think it actually, if you look at the state language, it ends at the end of that paragraph, there's no
Cities.
There's no statement at the end of that, and the state, you know, I think it actually, the placement
Flows.
adds clarity the way that Jamie has
Right, that's, I would agree.
changed it, but.
Anything else, gentlemen? Okay, so I think that Jamie, if you just make those changes and maybe bring a clean copy, hopefully maybe next meeting we can get a little further along.
Yeah, and so I mean, the sort of next step would be if the committee votes to pass this change legislation on, it would be sent to city council
Right.
and then go to ordinance subcommittee, who would then look at it again and they could then
Tear it
tear
up.
it apart and change it. But I mean, my understanding is that they would likely, you know, if it's a consensus vote from the CPA that this is just bringing it into alignment and this is the stuff that the CPA wants to see, that the ordinance subcommittee wouldn't start to make lots of changes to it.
Yeah.
But you never
They
know.
might,
You never know.
they
But,
might, and that's the scary thing about proposing a change. If it goes there, they could decide to rewrite the whole thing once they had it in committee, and that's where the power lies.
Except then it still needs a vote from the mayor to, you know, or veto if the city council changes it too much. So there's that balance.
Well, the mayor could reject it, and the council can try to override it. We generally have done that. I will say though that.
This will be that controversial.
I will say that probably back me up is, while I think things move fairly quickly through finance, sometimes things can get bogged down in ordinance.
Ordinance and property are where you send things to die.
Right, we could be sitting here next year talking about it being, but with all due respect, as not a member of the ordinance committee.
So I just wanted to mention briefly, if we're moved on from that.
Are we moved on from that?
Anyone else, any other comments? No, go ahead.
So potential applications coming in next month or later this spring. We have 2 potential housing requests, one from Valley CDC and one from the Housing Partnership. They're trying to work on separate projects and they're still trying to get the details of it right. So the Valley CDC is looking at a support of affordable housing through some sort of first-time homebuyer project, but they've come to the planning department who said, show the need. So if there's a need and they can document it, then they may or may not submit, but it take time. And then the,
Excuse me, are they talking about like a grant?
They
Somebody's
haven't-
gonna buy a house, we give them $2,000 for their down payment type of thing?
I don't know exactly what they're submitting, I haven't seen their proposal.
Okay.
But when they had discussions with Jessica, they were told to show the need for the first-time home buyer. Where it's used in other communities, sometimes they pay some parts of like the closing costs, and it's usually run as like a revolving loan type account that the CPA would give the initial funding to start that revolving loan, and then it would be a self-perpetuating project. I don't know what they're proposing, so it's just to put it on your radar that
Could be coming.
could be coming down. They may not. They may
Get
not.
ready.
They've been here before with it.
The Housing Partnership is also working on coming up with a proposal to support affordable housing by helping. We have the state has a registry of affordable housing, and there's a very difficult process to get your house, your units listed, and unless you're a large housing corporation or whatever, it's hard to manage 1 or 2 units if you're just like a homeowner. So the intent would be to work with a consultant who would, on an as-needed basis, be able to work with private people to help get these houses listed. And they would be, doing the inventories and doing all the financial.
So you have a point person for a portfolio of smaller.
Yeah, where it doesn't make
Property
sense
holdings
for
or
one
something like
person
that.
to do it on an individual basis. It might make sense if that person had.
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
see.
we'll
see what they
Are there
Right, I mean,
applications, are there applications for this consultant job to do this? That sounds like
So-
Right up your alley.
100,000 a year to do it, or what?
What do we got? $17.
$27.
27, sorry.
So
I
and
didn't want to
there's
spend it all.
two recreation projects, or open space, as Dan was alluding to, the one in Southampton, it's a Barnes Aquifer protection, so it's protecting land to protect the aquifer. There's,
How is that recreation?
sorry, open space.
Open space.
Because they're in the same category. And we received a request for, to look into the purchase of conservation restriction of land in East Hampton as well, on a separate property. So those two, they may be in March. They're a little bit further ahead, I think, than the housing.
Okay.
Without seeing the details, it sounds like it's going to be an interesting spring.
Yeah, so there may be a lot,
Tickler.
there may be
Right.
a lot to do in the spring or than,
Maybe not.
just a little
Tease.
tease.
And if they're not here by next meeting, we don't have anything for the next cycle, because we're clean now, right?
Yeah,
Everything we have is gone for this cycle, and the deadline is March 12th for the rest of them, right?
right, so that'll give the committee plenty of time we can work on the preservation plan and
We'll
have
go
a
on
public,
vacation.
annual public hearing, and that'll be it.
Maybe your friends will
Come back, they were here last time, they want to sign up.
No, I don't think they'll get that. They didn't want to disclose their details on their finances and what was left in that reserve line.
I have more questions on General Electric. Anyway, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all, and Alexis, I'm sure will be back to, assuming we have an agenda in March, it would be March 12th, is that
Yeah,
March
next meeting,
19th?
March 20th
March 20th?
at 6:30.
So it says 19th.